This video is sponsored by Game Toppers. Turn your own kitchen or dining room table into a premium portable game solution at a fraction of the cost. Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 765. Today we're going to talk about Great Western Trail, Argentina. And so what this is a brand new edition. Edition's not really a good word, but a new version, maybe? No. It's a new thing in the Great Western Trail universe. Let's call it that. Because it is very, very, very similar to the original Great Western Trail. But it's set, of course, in Argentina. You're going to be kind of rustling cattle, driving it through the country of Argentina, and in this case, shipping it to Europe and Le Havre, Rotterdam, and Liverpool specifically. And so it has a lot of the similar mechanics. So what I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to go down to the table. I'm not going to give you like an exhaustive how to play, but I will talk about what's different. And then I will come back and then tell you my thoughts and why I never want to play the original again. Spoiler there, but let's go down to the table. I'll try to sell my point of why I think this is way better, and then we'll talk more about that at the end though. So let's go down to the table. Okay, so I've got the game sort of set up here for a two-player or even a solo game. I'll show you some of the solo stuff. First thing to note here is you have the map. And so you're going to be traveling up and down just like you did in the original, going all the way up to here till you get to this spot where you then make your delivery, and you'll be moving your cowboys. You'll be going to different buildings. The starting buildings are randomly, put out if you wish. And then you have, in this case, instead of Native Americans that you'll be interacting with, you have these farmers here. And so there'll be some of these farmers that you can actually recruit to your main board, which is a different change there. And then you've got here the train, which starts at kind of the opposite end of the board. Instead of moving right, it moves left. And you can get the stations and all that kind of stuff and put your discs out there and some of your workers. And then it'll come down the side of the board and then hit your little end point, and you could hit this multiple times and score extra points. Now the one neat thing about the trains is it really is not tied to kind of your delivery threshold. There is a way to do that, but it's a little different here. But you can see these paths. See that one go up there and that one there. So as you are moving your characters through here, instead of having to go all the way to the end, if your train has reached, let's move this guy here, reached or passed that little spot on the route, you can actually circumvent and shortcut your trip to the end of the board to make your delivery. And so you can see here, if we just zoom all the way around, you've got these other routes here. So you can really make these laps a lot quicker. And so driving your train, not only does it give you little station bonuses and other things along the way, but it can really, shortcut your path there. So it's really cool. And the other little neat part of that is, I mentioned the farmers a little bit. You can see there are spaces here, and you can see there's a space there. So as you start to move towards the end, there'll be these little blockers kind of in your way, which again will be charging you money, because the little black and green hands on these, depending on the player count, you have to pay $1 or $2 to the bank there. So that'll be another reason you want to kind of shortcut that, so you don't have those in your way, slowing you down because you only get certain number of movements, per turn, and costing you more to get to the end. So that's kind of a neat little wrinkle there. The rest of the stuff here is pretty much the same. You got your different little helper workers down there. You got your different types of cows that are worth different victory points, different values when you go to deliver them. That's different. Now there is an action on the board to basically go and recruit or help the different farmers, and you can see there's a little value here. If it'll focus, it's like this one has a 7. This one here, it's got a 6. There's different colors, and there'll be different bonuses for collecting different colors and things like that based on the bonus cards. But then you also have these here, these little like scythes. So this is a value of 4, and you'll be able to unlock certain things on your board that'll give you extra scythes. Some of the helpers that you can recruit here and hire will come with scythes. So when you take the action to, and this is the space here where you can do that, where you can sort of help up to 3 farmers, then you can spend a certain number of scythes to recruit these. And if you use cards to that, because it is feasible to build up your engine so you don't have to spend so many cards, but based on the number of cards you use to recruit them, again based on the number there, because this will help sort of improve, focus up, there we go, Based on the number of cards you spend, you might take one of these cards here, one or two of these. These are worth -2 points at the end of the game, and they can be trashed and discarded like other things. If you go make a delivery, so at the end when you get to the end of your route, if these are in your hand, so you don't really want them because they're worth 0 value, but if you're in your hand when you make a delivery, then you can get rid of them, basically trash them at that point. But again, anytime you help them, it's kind of like it's like effort or exertion. You know, so you kind of wears your deck down a little bit, which is something that the original never had. You could thin your deck down, you could build it up with some of these higher ticket items, but you never anything like sort of trash cards, you know, like in Dominion or other games like that, they're deck building games, you have these cards that kind of clog your deck up. So that exists now in this game. And then kind of staying on farmers, you can see there's sort of a 4th row down here. So you have here your cowboys and your architects, and then your train engineers and all that stuff. So these are basically the same. When you do recruit a farmer, then you can either keep them face up, and there might be other bonus cards like I said here. Here's an example of that. So if you've built, you know, 2 buildings and you have a green farmer, and you'll satisfy that bonus. So you can leave this just off to the side of your board. They're worth 2 points like that anyway, so if you just put them off to the side, it's worth 2 points. If I put them face down, you can pay a cost. You can see this one costs 6, 6, 6, 8. And then you flip them over like that, and then this will give you a grain when you do that, and this one will give you a grain, and so on. So when you get grain, we'll just move this up, you start to accrue grain. And there's other ways to get grain in the game as well. Now, grain is something you need when you do your deliveries. So the first thing you do when you move all the way to the end there is you'll look over here to these 3 delivery spots, Le Havre, Rotterdam, and Liverpool. And everybody will start with one of their discs here on Le Havre. So let's take a closer look at that one. So here's Le Havre. You can see we've got the 2 discs there, the starting discs. The instant that you get to the end of the track, you make your delivery, you can spend grain. You can see here it costs 1 grain, 3 grain, 6, 5 grain. And let's say I had 1 grain. I can take then at the time of my delivery and move this to one of the sector parts in this sector here. So I can go, oh, I get 4 extra bucks there. Or if I had some extra grain, I could move it here, for example, get 5 extra bucks, and that'll give me 2 points at the end of the game. Now in a 2-player game, you put this little thing over the top, so it would cover that. So based on player count, you'll cover or reveal certain spots there. And there's other ones. So if you have here, you can see there's an A and a B side of the map, so you can kind of, you know, mess with that a little bit. Like if you go here, you can move your train up 3 spaces and you get 5 points. So there's some variability in there, which is kind of nice to have. So once you deliver that, make the delivery, the first thing you do is spend any grain that you have. So you want to get some grain along the way, and this is, you know, used to feed the cows. You can't just take a bunch of cows, you know, hundreds of miles without feeding them. So that's what this kind of comes in. Now as you get cubes or discs over here, and I'll explain how they'll get to either side, you'll get a little bit of a discount. So this gives you a +2 grain discount. And just by having these discs here, you get victory points. This one is 0 because you start there, but if every disc you have here, you get 1 point. And if I make a delivery, I've got now 2 grain discount. So I only need the 3 grain to go to here because it's 5 minus the 2, and so on. So anyway, after you do that, then you're going to total up your cards. Let's say I went there with this, so I've got these 2 are matching, right? So I only count one of them, so 2, 4, 5. And let's, for argument's sake, say we had the little medallions here. So we can spend that, we can get up to 6 if we want. And then we can take one of the discs off of our board, just like the original. And this is our kind of delivery track, which is now broken out into these tiles, unlike the original. So I've got 6, so I could go ahead and put it on this one if I want to. You can only have 1 on each of these, and these are different little ships. So let's take a look at the 6. So if we put it on the 6, one thing that we can note is we can pick one of the bonus cards, just like we could on some of the spaces in the original. It's going to cost us 2 grain. Now, if the grain you have to pay right away when you deliver, and you have to pay it. You can't hold it if you've got it. If you don't have enough grain, then you have to pay out of kind of the income that you receive. So I'll get my $6, but for each grain I can't pay with actual grain, then I have to pay $2. So if I had no grain, I would go here, get $6, have to pay 4 back because it's $2 per grain, which is okay. It's not the end of the world. And then of course in this case you get a bonus card, and this is where this ship will deliver to. So if we zoom out and then take a look at here, so as you know, players deliver, they'll be filling up this board with workers just like in the original. And remember, in the original, you'll refill the cow market at certain points, but here you actually will ship deliveries to the different colored ships there. So the first time we tick past that, we're going to deliver all the yellow ships, and then all the green ones, and then all the purple ones. And you can see here the different colored ships there, but where do they go, right? So all the yellow ships don't all go to the same place. Now I'm going to just talk about my one component gripe. Well, it's actually kind of two. Let's use this as an example here. So the other one, the first component gripe is this little thing is hard to see. And when that's out on the board there, it's hard to see where that bonus card thing is. It just kind of blends in for some reason. So I mean, it's happened to us when we played it. We're like, oh, I should have took a bonus card, you know, 3 turns later. The other thing is like, okay, you can see this yellow ship delivers to that anchor. See, it's kind of like this off-white gray thing. And then this yellow ship delivers to that kind of darker brownish one on the 2 side, right? This one delivers to that darker brownish one on the 1 side. So you're delivering to the color of the anchor, not the background. If we look here, and we'll just kind of try to zoom in there. So there's your kind of off gray one for Rotterdam, and there's your kind of darker brown Le Havre one, which isn't focusing, and then there's like a black one, like a solid black one, Liverpool. So you've got to kind of parse these kind of shades here of those. So yeah, it gets a little tricky there. And then again, of course, you've got the sides there. You've got the 1 and the 2. So if we look here, we're at Liverpool. If it says the 1, you'd put your disc on that side, right? And if it's the 2, you would put on that side. And if you're on the 2 side, you always get that grain discount for putting your disc out there. So that's my only kind of component gripe, is these tiles right here, a little bit hard to read. So that's all the pretty much the differences in the main game. We'll zoom down here to the solo game. It looks a lot like the solo game again in the 2nd edition. It's got a little bit of a different idea here because you're maintaining the grain. You have the kind of the card deck. Now this doesn't change. This kind of drives the actions, and just like the original 2nd edition, you move the figure a certain number of spaces based on some logic, and then it just does the action on the bottom. The action is not tied to where the building's at. And then there's 3 decks of these difficulty cards, and these are where it will deliver, and then it'll have a little variable here, X. So sometimes one of these cards, see if I can find one. For example, this one, simple, it'll move X spaces. And that will go up, and that'll be, you know, basically a bigger number with harder difficulty decks of these deliveries. And then this will tell you kind of the order it will deliver on the first try, and so on. It doesn't have to spend grain or anything like that, but it'll just kind of, you know, take up space on the board. So that is pretty much the gist of all the changes. We'll go back to my talking head. Okay, so that's a rough overview of Great Western Trail Argentina, covering most of the differences in the game. Let's talk about all my 3 pillars. We'll talk player count. I only played at 1 and 4 players, and I liked it at both player counts. I don't know that it would make that much difference. I liked the original at all the player counts, and you know, so yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't really make much difference. The solo game is really cool in this. It's about the same, you know, as the 2nd edition. I like it. So the thing I like about the solo game, I'll just reiterate it here, I've said it before, is it will kind of pick a strategy and kind of go, at least for a little while, after kind of one type of thing, either like, you know, getting lots of cows, building lots of buildings, rushing its train, that kind of thing. So I like that it will kind of play up differently. And sometimes it'll kind of switch strategies, like it'll get, you know, it'll change its mind. And that's kind of a neat, I really like that. It's a neat aspect of the solo game, and I really enjoyed that. And the 4-player game we played of, it was great. I love the interaction of it, and there's not a lot of direct interaction, but kind of the pacing of it and figuring out where people are going, being able to build stuff in their way, you know, that whole thing is really neat. So it kind of retains all of those great qualities of the original there. Playtime is the other one. This is 75 to 150. Yeah, sure. It takes 2 to 3 hours, at most 3 hours with 4 players. I don't think it even took us. We played with somebody that hadn't even played the original at all, and this was the first time they played this one. And it was my first time playing it as well. The new edition, this one, I played the original a bunch, but I think it maybe took 3 hours, but that was with rules, you know. It went pretty quick. So you're looking at about 2.5 hours. The solo games go really quick. That can be done in about an hour. You know, I like to take my time, so I think you could theoretically get it done quicker. Now, to me, I kind of spoil at the beginning. I won't play. I'm going to give my copy of the original to the other friend that played for the first time because he never played original. He's going to have that copy. I don't need to play that anymore. To me, this just does everything better. It just improves on everything. And it's almost like, the expansion for the original I did not care for actually at all. I thought it just totally muddied the game up and just was like this whole other mini game thing with the way the train worked and the delivery stuff. This feels like a fixed version of that expansion, right? It feels like they read it, but they were like, oh, we've got to start over. We can't just do it with the original game and do kind of what we want to do with the expansion. Now, this is a little bit speculation on my side, but this is what it feels like. It's like, oh, well, we really want to do this other stuff because we want to kind of add on to some of the cool elements of the game, but we've got to start from the drawing board to do that, and then they did it. And I think that it really, really pays off. The main thing I like here is the delivery stuff and the train, because the train was a little bit more tied into the delivery in the original, because based on how far your train moved was kind of how much of a sort of penalty incursion cost. It sort of abstracted the whole logistics of the delivery part, but they've made that a little bit more simulated here because you've got the grain side. So you've got to manage that. You've got to have some grain for your cows. You have to have it by the time you get there, but theoretically the idea is that you have, spent it across what you went. So anyway, so you've got that side of it. And then when you deliver, you've got these different markets that you can deliver to, and these different little kind of idea of, getting kind of special bonuses for delivering to certain markets, beating other players there. So before there was no like competition for certain things. You just kind of went and delivered your big old batch, but you can kind of position it so you're like, oh, I'm going to get on this boat. And because he's either going to give me bonus cards, it's going to let me to remove kind of the black background discs or get to this certain location to get an extra bonus there, which is kind of dovetail with some other bonuses and things like that, because some of the bonus cards are like you got to have a disc in a north and a south quadrant, all that kind of stuff. So it all kind of fits in there really cool. And you've got to have that grain kind of engine kind of going underneath the covers, and it just adds that other little layer of strategy there to that. And then the train, though, is still super important because you can still do like a train strategy, which I've seen work a lot. Is even the original where you kind of drive that train, you just get that going. But here it directly affects the length of the path that you have to take, which makes sense because as you build up your kind of rail engine, you'll be able to make those deliveries a lot quicker once you get them to a certain point. The idea is that basically, you put it on the train and it gets to the harbor, the next day or something like that. So that feels just way more, thematic and interesting that way. And I like the interaction, frankly, of the farmers versus the Native Americans. That was kind of, I don't know what the right word is, like whitewashed a little bit in the original. This makes a little more sense because in the original it was implied there was a cooperation element there, which did exist to a little bit of a degree, but I don't think that was largely the degree. This makes a lot more sense, the cooperative side, because you can actually recruit the farmers and they can help you, and they can help you in different ways. They can help you with your grain engine. They can help you score some extra points and kind of work on the side, like not as consultants, but it feels like you kind of pull them off as consultants versus applying them directly to kind of your grain engine, and that's kind of a cool aspect. A lot of the buildings, of course, interact with all of this new functionality, so that stuff still works. But it's just, to me, a much tighter thematically experience, and even the thing like adding the cards that are like the junk cards to your deck. I like that element is there because it doesn't really need a lot of help in the deck building department, but it was nice to have this, and I like that extra thing. Those cards have that extra ability to, it gives you another reason to spend those cards, which is going to help theoretically your deck at the end of the delivery, but you're going to do that at a little bit of a cost to get those into your deck. So you're like, gosh, because sometimes in the original, you get things so like I can't quite work how to just get the junk cards, and so I can have like a full straight flush, or whatever of cards. You don't want to flush, the opposite of a straight flush, into the delivery. Spending the cards to get the farmers kind of works for that advantage, but there's that little extra penalty of taking the 0 card, so it kind of balances itself out. So it's a nice kind of decision space to live in. Yeah, so I mean, the final takeaway is I just did a review of the top games on BGG. This one, the original was in my top 10 or something. It was going to be in my top 10. I haven't settled on the list yet. I'm going to do my top 50 here pretty quickly. And this just knocked it out of the park. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like when is the right time to do a top 50? As new stuff comes out, I'm like, that other game, I don't care about that anymore. But that's what this has done. Like, to me, it just works in all the different ways. There's a lot of variability with you can flip the ports on different sides and different stuff. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't show you too. But I just highly recommend this game. If you've not even played the original, just skip right to this one. It's a little bit more complicated for sure. It's kind of like Great Western Trail Advanced, It feels like there's an expansion there. So, you might try the original because it's not quite as much going on with this one. But to me, this just fires on all the different cylinders. And I talked about Brass Birmingham in that video that I just posted the other day. And to me, that was kind of what it did. This is doing what Brass Birmingham did for Brass Lancashire, the original Brass. Original Brass is a freaking awesome game. But Birmingham, adding that kind of extra wrinkles with some of the ways you can deliver, with the different beer things that you can deliver, and all, it just scratches it right up to like absolute 100% masterpiece to me. And, I still thought the original Brass was pretty much a masterpiece. I still think the original Great Western Trail was pretty much a masterpiece. So seeing somebody actually able to improve on something, in my opinion, so good is just awesome. And so I think that's what you got here with Argentina. Yeah, I had a joke with my friends, and this is prior to Brass Birmingham taking the #1 spot. I played this and I was like, just shut the hobby down. Because I really like this game. I just trying to be enthusiastic here, and also not try to make too much of an idiot myself. But I played this and I was like, just shut it down. We don't need any more games. It's like, this isn't good. Just shut everything down. They can stop printing Great Western Trail New Zealand. You just cancel it. This is so good. This is so fun. I love this game. I'm just kidding. You can still print that. I want to try it. But all right, thanks.